Welcome to HR Voices, a podcast for independent HR and people professionals and the businesses they support. HR Voices is brought to you by the expert team at HR Independence Limited. We hope you enjoy.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of HR Voices podcast. We're extremely happy to have you join us today. And we have the amazing Andy Green joining us. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Mary. Lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And thank you for joining us. We're extremely happy and excited today because we're going to be talking about the importance of compassionate curiosity as an essential tool for managers and for leaders. And it's really an interesting topic. So thank you for joining us to discuss that today. And before we dive into the topic, please take a minute to introduce yourself to our audience.
Absolutely. So yeah, absolute pleasure to be here. So my name's Andy Green, and I have a varied background. I was a clinical vet for nearly 30 years, as well as the co-owner of a multi-site independent small animal vet practice down in Kent, still a director there. And for the last few years of that, I was actually the people director. So I was directly responsible for all the HR. I oversaw our recruitment, retention, training, development, disciplinary process, had internal HR specialist working with us, but we also had external expert advice as well. So I've sat in a lot of those meetings and dealt with a lot of HR down the years. My background also is in personal development, leadership, and coaching, which is what I now do principally. I now have my own consultancy and I'm available to advise for strategy, recruitment, team trainings, anything people related in vet practices and beyond.
Excellent. So a really nice balance between using your veterinary background and also the skills that you amassed over the years as a business owner, as a senior leader within an organization, and working quite closely with external consultants in relation to their HR aspects of things. And now you are working with people and showing them the ropes, so to speak. So really good. And thank you very much, Andy, for sharing that. And on today's topics then, what is compassionate curiosity?
It's a great question. You can go to a dictionary and you can get various words. For me, compassionate curiosity is where you are asking from a place where you're wanting to connect with somebody else to learn something, and you're doing it not because you want to get something from them, but because you want to connect with somebody else. You're building rapport and you're wanting to actually understand what makes that person tick. What are they interested in? What are they passionate about? What are their skills and talents? What else can they bring to the table? Conversely, what are they worried about? What are their fears, their anxieties? What are their challenges? And what I love about this is it doesn't just apply in work, it applies in every relationship that we have. If you want to have a better relationship, be compassionately curious, find out about the other person, because we often make things more about ourselves and what it means to us.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And I think it's quite important because when you are having conversations, sometimes you can be talking across purposes. So I think setting the scene in terms of what compassionate curiosity means in context of an organization, management, and leadership is really important because, again, someone might think, why is it necessary to be curious, let alone to take the compassionate curiosity angle? Because quite honestly, I employ people, I have a team, they will do what I tell them, or they have the skills to do their job, and so they come in and just do the job. But as you've rightfully said, it goes beyond that. It really is connecting to people, to understanding people, what makes them tick, what motivates them, what is important to your team if you are in a culture or an environment where you are operating as a team, then what is important to the team? Because if you understand that, then you're more likely to succeed because you speak the language that your team understands. And if you want to communicate with them, they would also understand you better because you've taken time to understand what is important to them, right? Okay.
Absolutely. It's about the difference between that extrinsic motivation of I provide them with a job and a place to come and benefits, and I pay them so they turn up and do your job. And if you do it well, I will give you praise, and if you don't, I will give you pain at the simplest level. And getting to the intrinsic motivation that's so powerful. And there's a phrase that I learned and a concept I learned very early on when I was training as a vet, which is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the same is true as a leader, and the same is true from an HR perspective. Yes, we've got rules and processes and protocols, and they have to be applied and adhered to. There are good reasons for that. We need to be able to reach beyond that to connect with the human being involved. When you do that, you can transform the amount of engagement and productivity and retention. The metrics are out there, Gallup surveys, you name it. There's so much information out there to support that.
That is a really important phrase, Andy. And only if people cared as much about the human beings that we work with, I think there's a lot of synergies between caring for pets or as a vet caring for your sort of patients effectively that are brought into your clinic, the same way as if you are a leader caring about the people that you lead, because I think sometimes leaders forget that without those people, you will have no one to lead. And to be able to lead, you need a team to effectively lead, right?
100%. There's often a thought that the most important people in any business are the customers, the clients, but they're not. They're the team, because you don't have a team, you don't have a business. And I also learned early on that yes, I was in the business of treating animals, but I was actually in the people business a lot of the time, because no animal brought itself in, bar we have a couple of cats that do like to visit our surgeries themselves. One of them has a basket on the desk, but that's another story. But they don't phone up, they don't pay the bill, they don't bring themselves in. We have to deal with people every single day, and obviously in a highly emotional, sometimes situation. And the same is true of other workspaces as well. Emotions can run high. We're not dealing with automatons, we're not dealing with robots, we're dealing with human beings,
Yeah.
emotional beings. And we have to understand that and be prepared to connect with them at that level if we want that kind of culture where people will go the extra mile, not because you're insisting, but because they want to.
Absolutely. And emotional awareness is just a powerful tool. It's such a powerful tool for business
Mm.
leaders that I think once you become emotionally aware, it's amazing how much and how much it helps in your role as a leader and how easy it makes your role as a leader. It's quite key to success, isn't it?
Very much so. It's an essential building block of psychological safety.
Yeah.
And again, I'm sure everybody in this call is familiar with that concept and the importance of psychological safety in terms of being the fundamental building block of a high performing team. And if you want that, then that you've got to build trust. That's
Absolutely.
fundamental. And that means allowing people to be vulnerable, and sometimes being vulnerable yourself as a leader, and actually going, do you know what? Maybe I don't have all the answers. Maybe my team has an answer I haven't thought of. So having that pitch and catch, being able to the team to feel they can approach you with ideas, you can go to them with a challenge and saying, can you let's co-create the solution to this, give people an opportunity to step up and come to you with a solution to a challenge, not just the problem dump. And HR, and I know, can sometimes, it can be a thankless job sometimes, because it can be can be a bit of a whinge fest from people. And all you get is people coming to you with moans and complaints and challenges and issues. And you can end up with emotional sort of fatigue there. Compassion fatigue. Talking about compassionate curiosity, compassion fatigue is a very real challenge when you're dealing with that all the time. So again, making sure that we're setting up in a way that we're encouraging people to come to us. Yes, there's a challenge. Well, what's your solution? What's a possible solution to this?
Yeah,
Co-create
and
that.
I think that reminds me of a great leader I worked with years ago whose philosophy was do not come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. And the outlook wasn't to scare away from people highlighting what wasn't working so well, but at least stopped to think about what isn't going so well and why
Mm,
before you come to them to say, look, I spotted this, or I know this is in, and this is what I think we'll be able to do about it. And I think the whole thing, mindset switch, helps the whinge fest, helps minimize it a bit because the
mm,
person isn't constantly looking around and looking for problems. But when they spot problems, they start thinking about solutions as well. And even when there isn't an obvious solution, they would have thought about it to
mm.
really help frame what that problem is in the first place sometimes, right?
100%. That old saying that a problem clearly defined is a problem half solved. As well as the fact, as you say, if they've had a really good think and they can't come up with a solution, hopefully they appreciate this is not necessarily going to be an easy thing to solve.
Absolutely.
Rather than going, well, why haven't you fixed this? And you're sat there thinking, okay, I could quote you 5 different pieces of legislation. I can quote you 15 different protocols and processes we've got, and 400 people who are also having challenges. So, again, that contextual piece and that the self-awareness piece is really important for us from an HR perspective, as well as them from an employee perspective.
Absolutely. And why do you believe compassionate curiosity has become such a critical skill for managers and leaders to have?
For me, I think if you look at the world today and you look at the pace of change, for most of us, it feels like the pace of change has just accelerated, particularly in the last sort of 5 years since COVID. Constant change is the new normal. And with that, busy, more legislation, more challenges, frequent changes of legislation, other factors coming in, cost of living crisis, etc., etc. So there's a lot of pressure on everybody at the moment. So mentally and emotionally, as well as there's a continual bombardment of negative press. If you watch the news or you read a newspaper, it is not happy viewing. It is not happy watching. It is not happy listening and reading. So there's a lot going on out there. And I think making sure that we're remembering that we need to be compassionate. And that starts with being compassionate to yourself as well.
Yeah.
Self-care is fundamental here. It's very hard to care for other people if you're burning out and you've got compassion fatigue. And again, particularly in the veterinary sector, this is a huge thing. I use the oxygen mask analogy when I'm training people all the time. Get on a plane. What do they say?
Put on your mask
Put your
before
mask
you
on
help
first,
anyone next to
exactly,
you.
before because you
Absolutely.
can't help anybody else if you're flat out on the floor, and the same applies in this situation. So self-care first, then gives you the ability and opportunity to then care for others. From a leadership perspective as well, people in your team, they they're like children. They don't do what you say, they do what you do. So if they will mirror. So if you're practicing really consistently compassionate curiosity, that's what they're taking as the leaders that know, okay, well, we should be doing that as well. But we can't sit there and say, you should be more compassionate whilst wagging our finger and being completely lacking compassion and expect the team miraculously to care for each other. We have
I
to
think
take the
that
lead.
that is a very important point. The amount of influence that leaders set in organization. And I think that is important for when, as a leader, you are reflecting on what is going right and what isn't going so right within your environment. Because a lot of the time, when you're looking at that, you're looking for things outside of yourself, isn't it? Very rarely would you get somebody who will start with, okay, let's take a mirror, stand in front of the mirror, and let's see what impact that we've had in this environment to contribute to what is currently going on, and then include everyone else. So it's quite important that leaders understand that they effectively set the tone in the organization and everyone else follows, isn't it?
Absolutely. And if you want a really honest, hopefully honest, understanding of exactly what your influence is, 360 appraisal.
Yeah.
And again, for anybody listening to this who's had one of those, and I'm sure quite a few of us have, I certainly have. I'm sure you probably have as well. They can be really uncomfortable to read sometimes and to listen to, because there's all the good stuff in there, but given how a lot of us are wired, you tend to go straight to, well, what's the negative? And sometimes it's uncomfortable listening, but we need to know these things to be able to improve.
Yes, and it's quite important, I think, on 360 feedback specifically. And rather than just throw jargons there, because it's easy to assume that everyone knows, that is really when you're asking for feedback from people like your colleagues, people at your level. So if you're part of a leadership team, you're asking for feedback from other leaders within an organization, you're asking for feedback from people you manage, and even so done well, probably people you don't manage or but are linked to indirectly within the organization. And at very high stakes, sometimes stakeholders such as customers as well, to give you a complete view of what is going on. And you are right, Andy, in terms of it can be a very hard read. But a caveat that I bring with these sorts of assessments almost is always make sure that your environment lends itself to the type of feedback that you are asking for, because it's not to be used, for example, if you were managing me or I was managing you and vice versa, and then we asked for feedback on me and you were negative, is not an excuse for vindictor to say, hang on a minute, you were not nice to me. So when it comes to your appraisal, I'm not going to be nice to you. That is not the objective at all. And quite frankly, if you're that sort of environment, then you're not ready for such tools. It needs to be right.
I completely agree with you.
Excellent. So it's an important skill for managers and leaders to have compassionate curiosity. What's the difference between curious and being compassionately curious?
It's a nuanced difference, I think. For me, the way I look at it is for me, it's a difference between genuine curiosity and being nosy.
Mm.
So there's a difference between just, I want the gossip kind of thing. I
Yeah.
just, why are you doing? What are you doing? What's going on? Why are you this? Why are you that? But you're asking not because it's going to help build your relationship. You just want to know.
Yeah.
So compassionate curiosity, absolutely. It's about genuinely wanting to understand that person better and build rapport. So sometimes it's an opportunity because you'll uncover something and go, oh, yeah, I like that as well. Or I've had that situation, or let me share how I've had that experience. So it helps to build trust and rapport, because at the end of the day, people like people who are like themselves. We're looking for similarities. We're looking for things we can connect and bond over. Or alternatively, we're looking for areas where maybe we can provide some support and guidance for somebody who's having a challenge. Maybe we've had that experience and got through it, or we're in a better place. And vice versa. I might have something that say, do you know what, Mary, I'd love your help with this. That's much easier if I know that you're compassionate towards me and you're happy to have that conversation. I'm more likely to open up.
Absolutely. And I think in those circumstances, the statement you made earlier about as a leader being vulnerable sometimes helps, because it's all nice and good, it's all well and good when you're constantly asking about everyone else, etc. And the moment someone goes, "Hey, how are you doing?" It's a closed shop. I'm not up for discussion or I'm not up for conversation. I think that changes the dynamics
Yeah.
quite a bit.
It absolutely does. And I think humility is and this ties to humility for me. As a leader, it's really important that we practice and we express humility, stay out of judgment, accept that we do make mistakes, that we don't know everything. Teflon leaders, the ones who just apparently they know everything, they've always got an answer, they've never got an issue, they are unrelatable. And it's unrealistic because everybody's got their stuff they're dealing with. Everybody's got some doo-doo on their fan and various sizes of pooper scooper to deal with it. But it's like we've all got that stuff going on. So again, that sharing, and I think again for me as a leader, I'm very comfortable sharing with people where I've got it wrong. Either in the moment, for instance, I've had a conversation with somebody, it's not gone that well. I've not done a great job, for instance. Hopefully, happily, doesn't happen very often, but I'm human, so occasionally it happens. More typically out of work than in work. But again, in that situation, being able to go back to that person and go, you know what, I owe you an apology. I really don't feel I handled that conversation very well earlier. So I'd like to apologize for that. And could we just revisit that? Or just share, hey, when I started my career in your position, here are the mistakes that I made. So that
Yeah,
you're
and
relatable.
that is really important. Being able to sort of admit when you make mistakes sets an incredibly good example for
Mm,
your employees, because if they make a mistake, they won't go to lengths to hide it. They are more likely to come forward to say, "Hey, really sorry, I messed this up," and then an opportunity for them to correct it rather than to
mm,
be penalized for it. So if you, the leader, is able to demonstrate that where things don't go quite right, you're able to put your hands up to say, "Hey, really sorry, this didn't go right, but we'll fix it." It gives and sets the example for others to follow. And I think also in the same vein, it's important for employees to also remember that leaders are also human. And
hmm.
so be compassionate towards your leaders as well. It's not a one-way thing where just
Yes.
your leaders have to be compassionately curious, but you also need to be compassionately curious as
Hmm.
well towards your leaders.
Very much so. Leadership can be a really lonely business, a really lonely position, and we need the props as well sometimes, especially if your primary language of appreciation is words of affirmation, and people don't say thank you or don't come to you and say just okay. It doesn't have to be every day, but often enough just to feed that need, that essential human need. It feels really good. And especially particularly from an HR perspective as well. HR is a hard job. It's not easy dealing with all of that. And so
Absolutely.
if people on the team or people in the businesses that you're working with can take the time to actually say, thank you so much. I really appreciate what you've done for me there. I really appreciate I know that wasn't easy. That was a difficult situation. You've handled it really well. Thank you so much. I appreciate you listening to me. That goes a long way to actually making it a really good day.
I think it absolutely does. And you're right in terms of HR being a thankless job in most cases. And sometimes an HR consultant may even be worse because you go in, you troubleshoot, you solve the problem, and
Hmm.
then you move on. And your client sometimes probably even may forget that until an issue arises again, that you exist.
Mm.
So having that time when someone says, "Thank you for helping me. Oh, that was really great, was helpful." It's really nice to do. So, yeah, that is good. And how does, you've mentioned psychological safety a few times and trust. How does compassionate curiosity influence trust and psychological safety within teams?
I think it's a really big one because for me, it's to feel genuinely safe within a team, to build trust. It's a safety to be honest,
Hmm.
to be vulnerable, So for people to be comfortable sharing when they don't know, or as you mentioned earlier, when they have made a mistake, or if they have made a mistake, if they think there's a better way of doing something. So there's an opportunity to challenge, to disagree.
Mm.
Again, I think five dysfunctions of the team. That bottom one is absence of trust, that first one. Above that is avoidance of conflict. It's fear of conflict. There should be some healthy disagreement and debate within a team. If we're
Yeah.
going to innovate, we're going to progress, that should be the case. Otherwise, it's artificial harmony and everyone's treading on eggshells.
Yeah.
So I think, again, being compassionately curious allows that space for people to share, as I say, both their hopes and their fears, their strengths and their challenges, their ideas and their maybe their objections to something, which then should allow at the end of that consensus and agreement to be reached, and everybody moves forward with that agreement in place and nobody's briefing against that. But again, if we're compassionately curious, we understand that then maybe the quietest person on the team actually has some brilliant ideas. If we
Yeah.
don't give them the space to speak, then the people who like to come forward and speak in those meetings, or bring forward all of their ideas, can ride roughshod, not necessarily consciously, but unconsciously, accidentally, over those other people. So it's bringing everybody's strengths to the table. And we inherently have more trust in people when we're trusting them with something we know they're good at. How do we know what they're good at? Okay, well, we ask them, we observe, we're curious. They may have hidden strengths and hidden talents outside of work we don't know about, and go, oh my God, that would be so useful. So that's a massive building block for that, starting with that passionate curiosity. And then we're into making sure people are working in flow as well. Again, we trust people when they're in flow.
Thank you very much, Andy. So lots of golden nuggets in that sort of this statement right now, or that conversation that we just having around how compassionate curiosity impacts trust and psychological safety. Because you touched on a few key things there in terms of when you have a team, knowing your team, knowing that, okay, it's not necessarily the loudest person who's always got all the ideas or the quietest person who has no idea to share, but making sure that you set an inclusive environment where everyone feels psychologically safe to be able to contribute to the conversation that is going on, and maybe taking into account that not necessarily everyone's style is to stand up and talk. But if you create and give other opportunities for people to be able to contribute outside of the stand out in front of the room and talk environment, then there might be other ways of people channeling their ideas and thought through in this particular context and example. So yeah, thank you for that. Very useful. The next bit is, what risk do leaders run when curiosity is missing or when curiosity lacks compassion?
Blind spots and being blindsided by things that they didn't see or didn't know, and didn't know they didn't know sometimes. The genuine coming from back here stuff. So and sometimes it's relatively more minor stuff. Occasionally it can be something that's absolutely massive with huge implications and
Yeah.
ramifications. So it is that missing opportunities to learn and grow themselves personally, as well as from a business and a team perspective.
Absolutely. And yeah, again, blind spot is a huge thing, isn't it? Because when you have what you described as people work with people they know and like and etc. and who are like them, and if you take that literally and you are surrounded by yes sayers and
Mm.
now not people who challenge the status quo, sometimes when something is going wrong, you wouldn't even you wouldn't have a clue of what's not going quite well, because
Yeah.
what you've then created is an environment where it has to be all jolly all the time. So no one dares saying, actually,
Hmm.
we are not happy today, or that isn't going right, or whatever, until it's too late. And by the time sometimes you hear that, the knock-on impact is quite serious to deal with. So it's good in a team to be able to challenge, or in an organization to challenge the status quo, not for the sake of challenging it, but for when things are not going well, so that you reduce that sort of area, the blind spot area. You reduce it. I mean, in an ideal world, you want to eliminate every risk, but that isn't practicable. The best and the more reasonable way is to say, how can I reduce the risk or put mitigation factors in place to deal with that risk, isn't it?
Absolutely. Two classic examples of that from an industry perspective are flying, airlines, and medicine, surgery, anesthesia. Those are the ones where a lot of innovation came in those industries because of the catastrophic consequences of people not being challenged and avoidable accidents and deaths happening simply because even though everyone could see the death coming, nobody was prepared to say anything because the pilot's word was God, the surgeon's word was all powerful. So absolutely fundamental.
Excellent. Right. And in times of uncertainty, you talked about economic challenges, and then you talked about probably in terms of organizations are having to restructure, freeze pay, freeze recruitment, and not do much. And that is sort of causing uncertainty within organizations and stress among teams, etc. How does compassionate curiosity help leaders respond more effectively?
In part, it's acknowledging that there's discord, distress, unhappiness, dissatisfaction there with those things. Nobody likes not being given a pay rise. Nobody likes restructuring, downsizing, etc., etc. As a member of the team, and sure as hell, with time, very few exceptions, if you're the people tasked with enacting it and actually putting that together with your leader, HR department as well, in terms of downsizing or adjusting working hours and all these other aspects that come with this when businesses are contracting or they're under challenge and pressure, then it's that understanding that they don't expect them to like it. What we're looking to do is for them to understand the reasons why and to appreciate that it's not been done because we don't care, because that tends to be the very lazy hand grenade that gets lobbed in the direction of leadership and HR when there's anything that happens that's perceived as taking something away or clamping down or just not getting something they think they should have, or it's fear-based basically. But it's a lazy hand grenade, and it's really demoralizing for leadership and HR to get that lobbed in their direction when it's 99% of the time so not. It's the opposite. Is actually it's stressful, it's distressing, it's painful, it's uncomfortable to have to do it. And if the business is going to survive, it has to be done. If I'm doing surgery and then there's a seriously infected limb on a patient, and if I don't remove it, the patient will die, I'm going to remove the limb. Would I rather they kept all four limbs? Of course I would. But if I let them keep all four limbs, they're not going to survive. So difficult decisions have to be made. And it's that compassionate communication and that allow the conversation with people who are going to be upset. They're going to be emotional. They're going to be unhappy. And actually, sometimes we've got to sit there and open that space for them, let them vent, turn it into a dialogue, a two-way communication, so they then can appreciate where you're coming from. They might not want to hear it. It's important that they do hear it.
Yeah. And that is quite key. Communication is key to a lot of the things that we do, because if you don't communicate properly as a leader or as a leadership team, especially in cases where there's uncertainty, whether it's around restructuring, redundancy, whether it's around pay freezes and everything else, then you give room for rumor mills, and we all know where that goes. That is not, you end up picking and unpicking things a lot more than if you take in a proactive approach in trying to explain to people as to what is going on, how it's affecting the business, and how it might affect them as individuals, and giving them the assurance that actually you are doing what you can as a leadership team or as a leader to support them. And of course, if trust is there, then regardless of how hard the message that you are sending across is, then your employees would know based on that you are genuinely doing everything you can to help. So
Absolutely. It's when people are really uncertain, they're generally very fearful. So what we need to do is to give them as much certainty as we can about the situation, about what's going on, because that tends to reduce the fear level.
yeah, that is again really an interesting thing, because fear, I think, keeps us on edge, doesn't it? In the workplace, when people are thinking about their livelihood, their role, their impact sometimes goes beyond the self, isn't it? Not just me. When you go to work, you make friends at work, and sometimes your work friends become your family somehow. When something is going on, even if it doesn't affect you, it affects your friends, your work friends, your colleagues, and your family. So you are more worried, and you watch quite closely how that whole thing is being dealt with. So the fear is not just for you, for your role and everything else, but also how it affects the people around you as well. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. It's an emotional business.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can think about sort of management, etc., and where managers can use. So we talk about compassionate curiosity as a tool for managers to effectively do a better job, or to do the best job that they can. How can managers use compassionate curiosity when performance issues arise, rather than jumping straight to judgmental solutions?
It's about getting all the information. And again, if we're always doing this, whenever we're connecting with somebody else, whenever we're having that interaction with someone else, we want to have it under the umbrella of rapport. We want to build rapport with someone. You can't be in rapport with someone if you're judging them. It's the quickest way to break rapport. Because if someone's judging you, you can feel it, and you do not feel in rapport with that person. So how do you best stay out of judgment? Ask yourself one simple question. What don't I know? What don't I know? I do not have all the facts here. So what else is going on? If there's a performance issue, my first question is, are you okay? Is everything all right? What's going on? Tell me. Talk to me. Particularly if it's out of character for them. If you've got a high performer or someone who's generally very steady Eddie, not an issue, and suddenly there's a problem, there are issues showing up. What's going on? Obviously, if you've got somebody who's consistently failing to perform, there's still what's going on? How are you doing? How do you feel? What's going well at the moment? That's a great question, because if the answer comes back nothing, okay, right, we need to nothing? Really? Absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. It's an opportunity to open that conversation, asking high quality questions.
Again, that is quite, when it comes to performance issues, when you're dealing with personal stuff that impacts and affects you, I think people's default position is defense. So if the person is not performing, and they probably know they are not performing, coming into that performance discussion, their barriers are already up. They are way up there, and they're thinking, they are wondering, well, so they are looking for, I wouldn't say excuses, but they are looking for reasons to counter whatever might be coming from you. So it's quite important that if you're going to have an honest and open discussion, then it's perceived as it's an honest and open discussion, and
Yeah.
it opens the door effectively for the person to be able to tell you what is
Hmm.
probably actually going on with them. And it's important that they know what you're going to do with that information,
Mm.
because let's face it, much as you put in all good strategies or training, support, etc., sometimes it gets to the point where you don't have a choice but to part ways.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so it's quite important that in the first instance, the assurance is there for most cases to say, hey, this is not designed to be used as a tool to get you out of the door, but to help you to perform better in
Mm.
your role. And I can only help you when I know what is wrong. So, for example, if we use a vet scenario, if you know that your cat or your dog or whatever has swallowed something, and that's why they are having that pain, it will help save their life and will help the vet come to a very
Mm.
quick diagnosis. If you go and you say, right, we're here because at 2 p.m., just like over half an hour ago, my cat swallowed that. And then
Hmm.
they are onto something and they'll be able to help. But if you know the cat has swallowed something and you are withholding that information, by the time I'm sure you go through the primary ABCs of what could be wrong here,
Yeah.
the cat will still be in pain.
Absolutely, and very often it's those scenarios where, again, from an owner context, it's they may be reluctant to share something where they feel they're going to be told off because they've been an, in inverted commas, bad owner. They know they've fed it the wrong thing. They know they've done something they shouldn't have, albeit no, not deliberately, but they've whatever it happens to be. And so they feel uncomfortable to own up to it because they feel like they're going to get a real telling off, and they're feeling guilty about doing it as well because they know that their pet is now ill as a result. So it's being able to open that space, as you say, to say, help me help you, basically. Help me help you. I cannot do that if you're not prepared to help yourself. This is a safe space.
Hmm.
Okay. This is about, I want you to be happy at work. Because if you're happy at work, you're going to enjoy it more. You're going to be better at it. It's going to work well for everybody. The team are happier. And if are you happy right now? No.
Hmm.
Yes, no. Okay. Talk to me. What's going on? What's contributing to that? And sometimes you get the victim story, again, particularly if they're a bit more recidivist, but out of the bones of that, we can pick the key elements to go, okay, now let's reframe this, and then we can start moving them from below the line to above the line, and from victim to creator. Don't be a victim of your life, a victim of circumstance. Be a creator of your life. So it's okay. Well, how do you want to be? What do you want your job to be like? But that starts from that honest and open piece, which starts from compassionate curiosity.
Excellent. As I said at the very beginning of this episode, a very interesting topic, and we can probably go on for much longer on this, and maybe something we can explore later. But for somebody listening, and we probably piqued their interest, how can someone develop the compassionate curiosity skills if they've not got that already, or if they have and they think, oh, it's hard work being all nice to people and being interested in what they are doing all the
Mm-hmm.
time, etc. How can someone go about developing those skills or nurturing those skills?
For me, it's you got to do the reps. There's no shortcut, particularly with communication skills of any type. And this is an emotional level of communication skill. This is about just practicing. And the thing I love most about practicing communication is people don't know you're practicing when you're practicing. And for me, my mindset's always every interaction, every time. So I practice things like this when I'm going to buy petrol, when I'm in the shops, when I'm interacting with someone, when I'm walking past someone on the street, if I'm stopping to chat to someone, if I'm meeting someone for the first time in different situations. There's that opportunity to make a connection. And try different things on. Because again, what's your natural style? It's not going to be the same as mine necessarily, but work that out. And then again, it's about picking the right times. Your energy level is important as well, because there are times when, frankly, we're in survival mode, and if we can get through the day without losing it ourselves, we've done well. So you've got to pick and choose. Be intelligent about when you're applying this. But again, listening skills, quality questions as well. So avoid the closed questions, ask nice open questions, and actually stop, pause, and listen. So a lot of this is about active and reflective listening. And then that deepest level of all, empathic listening, where you're actually making an emotional connection, which means you are not listening in your head to what you want to say next, so that when their lips stop flapping, you'll start going. Okay. That's not how this works. Genuinely listening to someone because you genuinely want to know. Give them the time, and it's amazing what you'll get back.
Excellent. Great. Thank you very much, Andy. And would love to end the episode with your top 3 tips. So what will be your top 3 tips for anyone listening to us today?
First one will be start with yourself. Okay. Be compassionate with yourself. A lot of us will say things in our head to ourselves about ourselves that we wouldn't say to another human being. So be compassionate with yourself, number 1. Number 2, be open, practice. Just as I've said, try it for size. Have those conversations and start maybe with the low-hanging fruit. Practice it in those less charged situations. And the third one is consistency. It's consistency. The more you practice something, the better you get. Be intentional about what it is you're practicing, so that you make sure you're practicing things that are enhancing, not detracting. Excellent. And have fun with it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Andy. It's been a very insightful conversation. So thank you for joining us and for your time. And thank you everyone for tuning in and for listening to us. If you do have any questions that you'd like us to answer in connection with compassionate curiosity or any other topic that you'd like to hear us discuss, please get in touch with us and we'll be more than happy to answer those for you. And if you've really enjoyed listening to us, please share it with your network and your friends. Take care, and until next time, see you again soon.
Thanks, Mary. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of HR Voices. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover or would like to be a guest, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media or email us at hrvoices@hrindependence.co.uk. Tune in next time.